Hello, and welcome. And you can see I'm in a different office today because I'm with my mate Paul, who I'll introduce properly in a minute. So today, this live is really focused on something that's coming over the hill. So is looking at the changes in third-party cookies and what that means for social media, because it's going to have an impact. In case you didn't know, so Google were going to kill off cookies, and then they decided that they weren't going to go for the full depreciation, and most specifically they're talking about third-party cookies. However, they are going to offer consumers and users the ability to opt out, and that is likely to be quite a large impact. So that means it will impact all of our advertising, all of our targeting, and of course, it will be an important part of what's going on in social, because cookies have been a cornerstone for all our targeting and tracking and measuring. So I am delighted to have Paul with me, Paul Collier, who's CMO at Funnel Fuel, who has been spending the last year really exploring what this is all going to mean. So in a world which is very uncertain and a changing landscape, you are the expert, mate.
Blimey, I'll be worried about that. Afternoon.
So, and we're going to have a bit of fun. So, as you can tell, but we are going to dive into the nitty gritty. So, I want to set the stage first. So basically, for years, we as marketers have relied on cookies for ad targeting, tracking, and using these little data packets, whether they're pixels, which you're used to hearing about around some of the social networks, or cookies themselves. They've been crucial in helping both our platforms and us as marketeers develop profiles of our audiences, enable us to do personalization, precise targeting, and of course, measure effectiveness. But with this gradual demise that's really on the cards now, we know that consumers are more guarded, and the latest research from Forrester shows that that consumers are more, 45% of online adults are likely to be taking steps to limit the data that they share. And we know that Chrome, which is now going to offer the opt-in, opt-out element, is 65% of the browser market. So this is going to have a really big impact across the board. But I wanted to just narrow this down and talk really about, where does this impact social media marketing? Is it going to impact what we're charged for advertising? All these things. So let's dive into it. Paul, my first question is, this Google sort of, we're going to get rid of cookies, we're not going to get rid of cookies, but change of heart. How are you seeing the industry react to this?
I think my first comment was, when I first saw this, was, oh, what the heck's going on? This is, in my mind, not a U-turn. It's not a reversal. It's a redirection. When you think about what they're actually doing, and I'll get to that in a second, the industry reacted straight away. And as those usual naysayers wanting to rush to the 24-hour news cycle, some really big names in the industry going, well, this is it. This is the end. We're going to go back. It's all going to be okay. And then there are those who maybe a few hours later, the next day, the next morning, who are a little bit more informed and considered with their opinions, who said, no, this is just a different route to the same outcome.
Yeah.
What Google have done, in my mind, is ceded, and I think smartly so, have ceded the decision, the inevitable decision, to refuse cookies and the tracking and all the privacy stuff that goes with that, to the user, as other parties have already done. And in doing so, it removes any inspection or review by the authorities and regulatory bodies about their market power.
Yeah.
Because they're giving users choice,
yeah.
which is smart.
Yeah.
And I don't blame them for 1 second. The result will be the same. And so the industry will, you have those people, and I've been learning a lot in this last year, having joined Funnel Fuel, because I was consciously, willfully ignorant in my career. And I am learning how much I didn't know and still don't know. But Google have actually given that power to the users. And whether it's in your consumer life or in your business life, you know how often you go, no, I don't want it. Don't want it. And I've actually now, like an anorak, for the first time. I'm not a technical person. You know that very well. Some of the people who are listening, watching might know me well enough to know that I'm not. I now spend a little bit of my time commuting, clicking into who are the cookies, what are they doing, and how long I have to hold them.
Yeah.
And it's actually, now I'm saying no all the time until I say, actually, no, I do want to know what you're talking about. I'm prepared to give you my information over. So I will say yes on occasion. So there's definitely two streams in the market.
Yeah.
The more informed are going, it's not changing. The way in which it materializes is changing. And it's just the tip of the iceberg in terms of, in my mind, the whole sort of digital landscape, the digital supply chain. Cookies is just one issue, but it's an important start of the conversation.
It is, because I think it's fundamentally it's taking the rug out from beneath the feet of marketeers. So I know that you've been working with B2B marketing to benchmark how B2B brands, in particular, in this case, in this instance, are prepared for this shift in data. Are they? Have you got any data you can share?
I would even say aware first. Prepared is another conversation. So yeah, we've got an in-market survey that's still live right now. I checked this morning. So I think it's going for another probably 10 days. If you go to b2bmarketing.net or even on the funnelfield.io website, you can get a link to go into that and participate in the survey.
We'll put it in comments as well.
Thank you. Yeah, top line, there's a few data points I'm going to read, and I apologize for doing that, but my attention span for this stuff is really poor. Top line at the moment, and these are just kind of top line figures, they're not final. We haven't obviously finished the survey. The report is in process, and there's a couple of real sort of dichotomies here. In excess of 70% of the audience who responded see limitations in targeting and difficulties in tracking. 62% are concerned of issues around transparency, around control and compliance. 40% have not yet started implementing any strategies to adopt. 66% are somewhat confident in the ability to navigate. Kind of counterintuitive, but that's surveys. And again, it's not finalized yet. 36% are not yet exploring alternatives in targeting. See, this goes from one side of the I'm aware, and then 66% identified limitation of resources, which I think is crucial.
Yeah.
It's awareness, informed, capability to then act. And that's where we're going to be, because no one knows this at the moment. No one really understands. There are some really niche experts in how this stuff tech works, both in cookies themselves, as well as across the entire digital supply chain, programmatic advertising. It's actually quite an art. Trust me, I'm not the expert in that area. I'm kind of at the top end of it. And the one thing that struck me at the moment, and some of the stuff I got back from the B2B marketing team, and I take a breath, 60% of the audience who responded are not exploring new advertising platforms beyond the traditional giants in place at the moment. At that point, the blood drains from my face. Wait and see the results. We should have the final output with the research. I'd suggest 3rd to 4th week of September.
So ages ago, you compared this to GDPR. Do you think marketers won't do anything until their results drop off a cliff? Because that's what's really going to happen, isn't it? The results are going to...
Do you know what? And yeah, that was an analogy. When I first sat down with Dan, who's the CEO of this company, and some of the team members and the co-founders, I'm simple, and I put things into experience. I'm not technical. And I suddenly sat down and said, well, hang on, I had absorbed what I thought could happen, worst case scenario, doomsday. And I was then reminded of the experience I went through GDPR. Very quickly, we got limited time. I was head of a marketing function with sit on the P&L, and I sat on the board of leadership. One of my team members in one of my regions came to me and said, there's this legislation coming up. It's in the major organizational structure of your P&L. You need to pay attention because it's going to limit our key functional capability in going to market to generate revenue. Oh, okay, what is this? And it was a very rough outline. When's it happening? Oh, next year. Okay, come back at the end of the quarter, and it kept getting pushed out. That GDPR got pushed out another year. So that individual knew not to come back to me. Yeah. Until at which point my strategic radar went more than 3 quarters. And then I was already aware. I didn't understand and comprehend. I went through a learning curve with that individual, and she knows who she is, so I still thank her for it. And then when I was aware, I then went to comprehension, understanding, and then I had to accept it. Yeah. There's a phase you go through, human behavior. Once I accepted the potential negative outcome, I then had to internalize it and go, right, actually, this is an opportunity. It's an ugly opportunity. Your data is going to get completely shot to pieces. The German boss said to me, we've been there before. We threw out 95% of our data because Germany were 5 years ahead of the curve. That worried me, but then I accepted it, and then I did something about it. We started the process late, like everyone else did. But that process and that experience is how I equate to where we are now.
Yeah.
We're aware of it. Do we understand it? Once we understand it, do you comprehend it? And then do you accept the issue? If you do, you've got to go and do something about it, surely. And
Yeah.
I'm talking to many people who are aware, and I'm still trying to understand the details. I accept it. That's my job at the moment, and I've come to this company because I've gotten on board with this one. And there's still quite a few people who do not want to go to that level of acceptance because they need to do something about it.
Yeah.
And there's a high level of ignorance, so that comprehension still to be gone through. So
Yeah.
that's where I get the GDPR analogy from. So to your question, I sincerely hope we don't do the same thing, because we should have learned from GDPR.
Yeah, and because this is so much worse in a way,
This could be a lot worse in terms of
could,
fragmentation.
yeah,
GDPR was legislation that went through from a fairly consistent basis across how many countries in the EMEA, and then similarly applied to America latterly. But it was consistent.
Mm.
The outcome of this entirely possibly could be completely inconsistent and create a much broader set of issues than just one broad brush legislation. Now, a lot of this is supposition and think maybe, but we should have learned from our behaviour in challenging ourselves around GDPR. Don't do the same thing you did at GDPR. Or if you did it really well, you acted on it, great, apply that thinking to this.
Yeah, exactly. So just pulling it back to social, how are cookies used in social for targeting?
So at the moment, it's a piece of tech that, as you enter that platform via the browsers, etc., enables that platform to track, monitor. Use the word carefully. Track is a very important word nowadays, but it is reality. Your behaviour on the platform, and also off the platform across other domains once you've left for a period of time. And again, when you look through your cookies that you're accepting, check the number of days those cookies are put on, and the companies from all over the world. If you're reading a bit to it, Mail Online article, you see the number of companies from all over the planet and going, what the heck are they doing this for? Well, there's reasons for that, and the period of time. So when you're on that platform, and subsequently for a period of time when you're off the platform. And so they can gather data, and then they can sell that data as a persona, as an insight, as a behavior set to advertisers, to researchers. It's monetizing people's activity and behavior. That's the sole reason these companies exist. And equally, if you're a brand, you own a website, you want the same technology applied, so you can monitor, track, and assess and service more adequately, more appropriately, your engaged users on the platform. So that's the very basic nub of it.
Yeah. No, just because it was really interesting at the B2B Ignite event. We attended. The question went out. Are you using third-party cookies? Well, everybody who's advertising is using third-party cookies in one fashion or another, even if they're not doing so directly themselves.
As well.
Yeah, and it was quite interesting how many people said they weren't until you talked to them and said, well, you realise if you're advertising, you're effectively using third-party cookies. There's also another element to the change in data, which is going to be the algorithm. So, we have the beautiful thing in most of our social networks is they're effectively walled gardens of first-party data. So in-channel advertising is not quite so deeply impacted by this. However, it supplements the data, for instance, in Facebook by the Facebook audience network, which will be impacted, which is the cookies that sit all around. So that thing where you go to a website and maybe look at, some face cream, and then suddenly you go back to your Facebook or Instagram or Threads page. Well, not Threads anymore, not yet anyway. But you go back to your Facebook or Instagram page, and then there's an ad about face cream, and you think that's weird. How did it know? Well, it knew because it went and got those cookies from over there. So there is likely to be some algorithm changes because there's going to be a reduction in the amount of data, I think. And so what we'll see is things like behaviors and preferences will need to be bolstered. So I suspect, and again, don't know this categorically at this stage, but what we'll see are the social networks asking us for more information, and they'll do so through polls and quizzes and tracking what we look on Instagram Reels or wherever it is. And they will use that to help bolster it. They'll also very likely use a greater amount of AI in order to make predictions, so that companies who advertise with them get the best opportunity to target the right audience. But it does mean that I suspect over the next year we're going to see a lot of algorithm changes, which is which is always a joyous thing.
I think to that point, and this is where I kind of take the wider stance, and this process has enabled me to take a step back and look at other vehicles as well as what's going on in social and current tools. That if you're thinking about, the people that run those organizations, they are trying to monetize and create value, so they can then monetize and sell, because that's their revenue stream. And so if a portion of the intelligence and the material that enables them to create a persona and sell that behavior as a revenue stream, if a portion of that data is going to be removed because cookies are no longer allowed, third-party cookies, then they've got to work harder to create the same value over a period of time, because it's diminishing returns exercise, because these things age, this data ages. So if that data's starting to age because there's no longer cookies being accepted, how are they going to get the data quality up? They've got to create more engagement. And to your polls and surveys, it drives me nuts. But some of those social tools don't do any of this, because they're actually transactional. They are. I mean, a couple of the key ones, and you and I shudder at this, Twitter, which is it's not a relationship, it's a transactional tool. They are going to have to do much harder work to create more data, create more value than just rely on these cookies. So I think they'll be spending a lot of time, and I hope it's not solved by AI, because that just frightens me as well as a consumer and somebody in business. But what are they going to do to engage me, to allow me to go, okay, we'll give you my data? Massive question mark over that. But then you're going to get more discrete or more clarity in terms of walled gardens of data and experiences to enable those users to say, yeah, you can have my data for a period of time. It's going to be an interesting evolution. What it also does, I believe, if you're looking from a marketing point of view, and you and I had a conversation a week ago about this, and I kind of tested you with my theory, and I speak from my experience. You do a marketing plan, you put something into market, and you do, here's the social version, A, B, and C. Here's the channel version, the indirect channel. Here's the direct channel. And one of your colleagues on another call recently accused us of being a bit lazy. And I kind of balked at that. And I thought, no, actually, that's right. We have been lazy as an industry, both from the client side and other parts of the sector as well. There's an opportunity to take a stop and go, if this is going to start to happen, I need to look for alternatives to bolster, to augment, to add to the current portfolio of in-market activities. We could see things demonstrably changing from the negative. They may be less effective. They may very well be more expensive. Right? There's two ends of the spectrum. They are becoming more expensive now because there's 40% less of the marketplace available because of Safari and iOS turning their cookies off. That's been proven. So everyone's going for a market that's only 60% of the available targeting individuals than there were 2 years ago. So it should be a catalyst for people to go, okay, if that's going to start happening, I need to look around other things to add to my go-to-market activities, other channels, as well as the social stuff, as well as the direct stuff. So we get into the term omni-channel. So I think there's an opportunity to everyone. It's a risk, but you've got an opportunity as well.
Yeah, and if you do it in a test and learn fashion, it should. I mean, I guess social has an advantage in the sense that it does have first-party data, but I don't think that's the only answer, because exactly as you said, as a consequence of that, the very few estates out there that we can get out to market with are going to have first-party data, which means that anyone that does have it is going to charge a premium. So suddenly everything is going to get more expensive. The other side of the spectrum is then what you're investing needs to work harder for you. And that really leans on the need for greater creativity. Talk to me about that side of things, which is really, we've got away with a lot, really, haven't we, as marketers?
Yeah, and just want to get back to that. I've used the term where I was consciously ignorant for many years because it worked, right? I gave my agency or my direct team, who were in control of the channel part, we did a campaign or go-to-market exercise, and it was version. And whether it was owned and delivered directly for me with my in-house resources, whether it was done by an agency, etc., I would go into the boardroom and the website was doing this, and at the end, money was coming in the back door. And I'm not being very simplistic, of course. There was always cause and effect to the point I could measure it, and you can't always measure, right? And I remember specifically one time when that didn't happen because I didn't know what had gone wrong, and it was an issue with it was actually a paid-for advertising test that we did that just failed miserably. The provider of that test said, no, we give you all the clicks, etc. Nothing happened behind, and that shook me. And I think that's what triggered me down this path from a personal and professional point of view, which is that potential, I believe, from my experience, is very much more likely to be happening more times in the future, because things may not work as they used to. It may not just work as well as we used to do that. So I think there's an opportunity there to just take a look at where are other vehicles, where are other opportunities to get into market via mechanisms that we may already be aware of, but we may not have brought to bear in our professional capacity, where I talk about omni-channel, etc. And so that's going to be an interesting version of marketing for next year, the year afterwards, which is you may have a campaign, but I believe there's a potential for you having to develop specific campaigns. I mean specific campaigns, even from a creative, from a version, from a message, from an execution point of view, per channel.
Yes.
Not versions of,
No,
specific of. Because if a social channel or an owned publisher creates a walled garden and a technical mechanism within their own walled garden, which of course they're going to do, because if you own it, you measure it, you monitor it, you can sell it. That's the issue. We go back to GDPR. That was a broad brush, standardized consistency. This could produce, it will produce walled elements of data, of the way you interact, how you interact, which format, which technology you use. And all of a sudden, there is the worst case scenario. I don't want to be a doomsayer. I don't want to be too negative. You could have to do separate campaigns, discrete campaigns for specific platforms.
Yep.
And versioning is taking a new meaning. And that's just me going
with a better understanding of who that audience type is with what first party data there is.
How you interact with Twitter or Facebook will be different from how you interact with the Wall Street Journal or the FT or whatever social. And then the other piece of all of this is, and get to the other piece, which is, and I'm experienced as a consumer, and it used to annoy the heck out of me, but there's a convergence of B2C and B2B. I'm now already accepting, I am one of those old fuddy-duddies who does certain things for business, certain things for pleasure. COVID and all of our lives crashing together has brought those technologies together from a technical point of view, but from a user point of view, it's brought the acceptance of those messages converging. So I'm now okay and probably professionally intrigued that I have had, my wife called me to the front lounge, as we call it, a couple of months back. There's an advert for you from Netflix. She was watching my account. Some fantastic documentary that's on my list, I suppose. And an advert for social media advertising technology. That's not me. That's got to be for you on a Sunday afternoon. That used to annoy me. Now it's like, actually, that's smart. So there's other social tech. And I would say, do we have to redefine what social is? Connected TV, audio, radio. Then you move into digital out of home. You know, we did a test. It was a bit of a test of B2B Ignite this year, where we did out of home advertising in context, people to and from that event. A few years back, you kind of gone, I've done a few posters. Look, it's a vanity exercise. Now you can link that in as an alternative or an add-on to the standard social stuff, omni-channel. So there's a real potential to take this change and go, let's just relook at everything and get creative. And rather than go, oh God, it's going to get, I think there's an opportunity to go, well, okay, so we could just start afresh, couldn't we? Let's throw the rule book out before it gets thrown at us by two companies. Let's redefine the rule book on our own part, and in some cases de-risk from those companies and look at other alternatives.
Spot on. And it's really interesting listening to you, because when I set up
Not many people say that, thank you.
No, it is because 20 years ago when I set up Immediate Future, there wasn't any of this tracking. It wasn't any advertising, to be honest with you. And, but you know, as it evolved, one of the really interesting things is the first part about a social network that was the marketeer's amazing opportunity was the fact that we cluster around interests and behaviors, and on each channel it was very different. So you know, on Facebook you threw sheep at each other, you know, on Twitter it was a cheap way of doing SMS when you had to, for those of us old enough to remember, you had to pay for text. But the point being is your behaviors clustered around things. You were no longer just a demographic. You were not a 50-year-old woman living in the south of England. You were passionate about knitting or mad about gardening or into your cars or whatever it is. You know, all of these things became much more important, and we need to start to think more around those clusters and contextual, and then as a consequence of that, do that within each channel. And we've been advocating it for years now, which is B2B. It's not just LinkedIn. We get amazing results. An attributed pipeline of 38 million from a 12-week campaign running in for a B2B tech brand in Facebook. I mean, what else can you say? You can still do it.
I remember a conversation we had in another office I was working in 7 years ago. You talked, and I was the CMO, regional VP, and you came to me about the C-suite of Facebook, and I just, and I remember 18 months later picking the phone up and going, I think you might be right about this. And then I had the phrase we came, I've just written it down, micro influence.
Yeah.
The mass market, even within B2B, you know, let's do an ABM campaign. I've seen an ABM target account lists that are in the tens of thousands. Well, that's not ABM. That's just marketing, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not criticizing anybody because some companies have got audiences that big. But when you get into the fragmentation of the potential to identify, target, address, and the measurement's another issue as well, which is a third issue in this entire, because that's changing and that adds to this situation. It's going to be the islands of opportunity.
Yeah.
And that's why some of these new technologies and the new emerging ways of identifying people are not one solution. Companies like Funnel Fuel that can do this, they go, well, we've got a plethora, a mosaic of identifiers, an ID graph to identify first your target with all of these other partners, and they all participate. And it won't be one broad brush answer. There'll be points of, I won't name term yet, I should remember it again, micro influences. So you'll have to consider it and think about it that way.
Yeah.
Potentially.
Yeah.
But you've got to actually rewire or take your brain back a little bit in terms of the years. We maybe have been a bit lazy. We've certainly been ignorant. I've certainly been ignorant. And so this is a potential bit of a wake-up call about what we may have taken for granted. Certainly from a client advertiser point of view, I know I did because it worked. So don't rest on your laurels. Don't wait for it to come to you. Don't be part of the 60% who are not exploring that frightens me still. And I suspect that number's even bigger, which worries me.
Yeah.
So,
and we might not know the outcome.
No.
We might not know where it's going, but if you're not exploring this and going, right, what are the plans and strategies, then you're kind of going to always be on the back foot. I just spotted we've got a little comment, and please ask questions. You can do so live, and we'll try and answer them live as well.
As you read that question out, there's somebody that spoke at the Ignite event, and they said something really quite telling, because the response was, if you don't start doing this, if you don't start considering or exploring, your competitors will.
Yeah.
You have to assume
you have to assume somebody else is going to
do it. And you're seeding, and the individual Riaz was on stage with me, they said you're ceding market share to your competitors. I thought that's a little, but I get the point.
Yeah.
Don't get caught looking down at your nasal at the start line.
Yeah. So this is a comment by Jaskiran Sond. I hope I've said that correctly. I think that this will require us marketeers to work faster, and so generative AI adoption will be higher to support creating more compelling messaging and brainstorming, engaging content to boost those social engagements and continued nurturing. And I think that's really what we're getting at, which is, thank you very much for that, which is that we are going to need to be more creative. However, I'm not 100% convinced, having worked every single day with AI, that AI is our solution to this. It may be able to help us cut a few corners, maybe do some of the research in the background, the heavy lifting work. But what about you? Do you think AI is
so not to go sort of too loud and hard on this one, I think AI has a very, very strong place and power within the ideation, the research, and the early stages of anything from a creative output.
Yeah.
Get the other. I was looking at something today as I was doing some research on another piece here, and there was this thing that popped up on, I think it was LinkedIn, and I'm already now consciously tuning into, is that AI or not AI on LinkedIn? And because I can see there's some flickering in the individual they move, whether that's the film rate or whatever the technology is. My first response is that's AI, and I literally blocked it straight away.
Yeah.
And I find it offensive that someone's used AI to give me a marketing message. It's inauthentic. In the consumer world, there's a lot of pushback in some of this, and B2B will be the same. You take it so far and use it for what it's good at the moment, but understand what it is not good at and what it's very limited of. And there are some really good case studies, and people are getting in serious trouble for, not in this area, but in legal in the US, for example. There's been a few problems, people getting fired, but they're using the tool and they're taking it too far down their process of professionalism. And they're getting found out through ignorance or through nefarious situations. it has its use without question,
Yeah.
but don't forsake creativity.
No.
Don't forsake the human element in that, the personality of your
Yeah.
company, the authenticity.
And the knowing your customer as well, knowing your audience.
And
Talking to your salespeople.
your customers know your personality, right? And so the AI will never I hope, I don't believe it will never replicate that entirely. And as soon as you get a situation where the customer thinks, is that really you, or is it the digital you? You have a major issue, especially in B2B, I believe. Trust, authenticity breeds a lot of very strong ongoing relationships and business. So I would say, caution AI being used too far down that process.
Totally agree. Let me bring this back to the cookies. Oh, we got oh dear, the team event has stopped broadcasting for me. I'm so sorry. It's working at this end. I think we're still broadcasting. I'll have a look at that, and we will definitely post this.
If we carry on, we can send it back out. Well, I'm happy to redo it. I think it's
so there are some solutions. It's not all dire. There are some, and we know that there are things around contextual targeting, which we've mentioned, some privacy preserving sandboxy things. What's your take on these alternatives, and also how, just without pushing you too hard, what's the funnel fuel take on this? Because that's really what's driven this.
So I think the key thing in this one, the sky's not falling in. Don't worry. The cookies in their current format will still be around for a period of time, but again, it's incumbent on you as marketeers to look at alternatives and be ready for what will be a change coming. Whether it's next year or 18 months away, it's going to happen, and start thinking and planning accordingly. And in that situation, you can guarantee if anything in technology, where there's a problem, there'll be a solution. It's either being developed, or it will come out of California or Far East, or even over in London in terms of startups. And there's a lot of very smart companies and very smart individuals producing technology that can operate in terms of targeting and identifying individuals to a point, definitely to a degree, rather than at a specific individual level. In some cases, far better, with better results than the current solution. And the sort of basis of that, which is why funnel fuel exists, is if underpinning all of that, we touched on the analysis and the metric side as well. Cookies use is one part of this ecosystem. You have a complete and underbelly and technology and piping of what I term as a digital landscape. I've nicked that from a client organization who I spoke to a year ago about what they were doing about this. And they smartly, and they're a big company, said, we get it. We're bringing everything in-house, and we're modeling everything ourselves. We're taking control of our digital destiny. And I just thought that's really smart. Funnily enough, the person that joined the company is an ex-Google executive. and so they used the word digital destiny. I thought it was a fantastic point. And I took that to the digital supply chain. Because I need to be simple about this, because it's very technical, very complicated in terms of how it works. It's all predicated on a B2C background. It's the internet. If you're working in B2B, we kind of made it work. It was made to work for us. Funnel Fuel and the tech people and the co-founders realized that, having come from publishing and ad tech, and now myself from the client side, we believe we could do better by producing a tech stack that is B2B orientated, generated and created for B2B purpose. And part of that is the identification of the individuals, or groups, or companies. We're at companies at the moment. And you can go to another level based on behavior at a later stage. Then you use the appropriate technology, the omnichannel technology, within the right context, whether you're going to work versus going to the shops in the afternoon, Saturday, Sundays, etc. Overlay context with other channels and other vehicles. So you actually broaden your capability to engage with that individual. And then crucially, we've also developed analytics, because the current analytics package we all live and breathe around is not fit for B2B purpose. It's a B2C package. It's a B2C tech, and it doesn't work. I'm sure people have been through the pain this year in comparing this year versus last year, and everyone does the same thing or rolls their eyes. And people in the digital teams just look down at the table, because it's brutal at the moment. So ahead of that even happening, before the team were really consciously aware of that, they wanted to develop their own analytics package, So we've done that as well. So the reality is we've kind of developed our own digital supply chain, omni-channel, cookieless, and an analytics package at the back of it. So we are one of those providers in specific B2B media tech. And we've done that in mind of the three stalls of our potential audience, our agency networks or agencies who supply and work with the B2B clients. We have a B2B client direct business as well, and publishers. So we're working with three ends of that spectrum, which is equally important, because if we just
because you need to,
if we're doing the supply chain, we need to work in all parties
yeah,
rather than just at one end or the other. I'm not criticizing anybody because the industry's grown that way, and it's done very well. But there's an opportunity to do better. And we believe we can. And so far, business is good.
Do you know, I think that's the thing, isn't it? You can look at this as, oh my God, everything's changing. And I think I can understand it if you're in a marketing team where your resources are tight, which we're seeing, resources issue. It can get, I mean, marketing can be quite exhausting at the moment because we have so much requirement for agility. I get it. However, you can also look at this as a really massive opportunity to really get back to some marketing roots.
Yeah.
And get back to really considering what your messaging is going to be, considering to which audience you're trying to appeal, really getting into the heart of what we do as marketeers, really, I think.
And I think to that point, you had one of the biggest catalysts in the last 10 years, let's be very clear, was COVID, right? And the landscape in business and marketing for everybody worldwide in all industries changed. So we had a bit of a, oh, what the heck moment. And we had to do things differently. And so a lot of stuff had to be completely re-engineered, both budgets, resources, and how things got done. And there were some fantastic creative examples that were as a direct result of the unknown, unprecedented, really scary challenge that created everybody. And I saw some great stuff coming out of some of these seminars I already attended last year. Again, in the B2B sector with Joel Harrison and the organization. And you're thinking, when the questions are asked, the individuals in this industry can do some really smart stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And if I was in that CMO role now again, having done the GDPR thing, having got through COVID, you're going, come on, we can do this.
We could do this.
It ain't that big a deal, right? If we got through, I mean, this is not going to be that big a deal if you let it not be that big a deal. If you don't deal with it, if you take Gartner's figures, I think there's a report 18 months ago, in market delivery of a message, typically between, I think it's 58 and 62% of the budget that's spent is done so via a digital mechanism. And you might not be thinking, but I'm doing advertising over there and my social and my Google search. No, all the other activities you're getting into market using digital channels, the digital supply chain. So it's pretty fundamental. Take mistakes. And take the opportunity to take a step back and go, right, there's an opportunity to really rethink this. Let's get creative. And let's not wait for the thing to change around us. Let's get ahead of it. Some of it's going to work. Some of it there may not be a solution for. So wait and keep an eye and monitor it.
So we talked a little bit about cost, but we know that privacy is going to be, even regardless of this, we're going to have challenges around privacy, aren't we? Where do you think it's going? Because I know I read out that Forrester insight saying 45%, but it feels very low, doesn't it?
With all due respect to Forrester, I think that's undercalling it by about 50%. There's some great data in a couple of the online research tools that have up-to-date data based on the records of opt-in and opt-out on iOS. They've done this cookie situation, I think about 18 months now, maybe 2 years. They're averaging 75% opt-out, up to 96% opt-out. That is intuitive to me. Now, and that varies considerably. And when you dig into it, it's fascinating. I'm not a stats person, but I do find behavior interesting. When you dig into it, it varies quite considerably in a margin of 10 or 15 to 20 points based on the geographic, the business segment, and the type of activity, gaming versus social versus whatever it is, and then by country. And you can look at different countries, and the polls can be very, very. So if you're, I can't remember all the data points, but if you're in a certain sector in a certain country, you might have a much greater risk of everyone opting out than another. And it's worth, again, doing the research as to, history doesn't always tell you what's coming in the future, but in the absence of anything else, it's a pretty good
Yeah,
indicator.
yeah,
So with all due respect to Forrester, that percentage I think is intuitively very low. I
yeah,
think if you're looking at a from a B2B point of view, I would expect it to be in excess of 65, 70%. You're going
yeah,
to have to assume that's going to happen. Because then if
yeah.
you assume that and be prepared, you will benefit by being prepared. If you don't get prepared and you think it will be okay, you may have a big issue coming up.
So where should marketeers start? What are the, just in your experience, you've been exploring this a lot longer than the rest of us. We're all sitting here going, "Oh God, we've got to deal with it. What do I do? What are the strategies?"
You want answers, haven't
Yeah.
you? No, and I think this is again, this is the point where we're at the awareness stage of it as an industry. And we talked earlier on about some of the people I talked to when I first got hold of this subject with the guys at Funnel Fuel, and I had to go through that process. What? Did I not know any of this? No, I didn't, and I really didn't need to know it. And when I played it back, perhaps when I got it wrong. Now I know. I think I know why. And I went through a period of, I went through loads and loads of research, and I went out to the industry. You were one of those individuals I talked to and said, I think this is happening. As a client-side marketeer, this is what could happen. And you went, and your team kind of, yeah. And I spoke to other people, your peers in the industry, and a lot of people were going, I know about that word, but what are you saying is actually going to. So we're at the awareness stroke understanding stage of this. And it's been accelerated recently because of all the news. Comprehension and understanding is a really crucial part. Accepting it, that curve is going to come very, very quickly. And the willingness to accept it, I hope part of our job is to just push that forwards rather than don't kick it down the alleyway. Don't push it to the long grass because it will come, it's going to happen. And so first thing is self-analyze, just go through your own belief, your own values as to, do I really understand this? And it's really hard to sit in the boardroom or leadership team and go, what are you talking about? It's easy when it's a consultant, as I am. I go in and say, I'm going to ask all the dumb questions because I can.
Yeah.
And you can see the room going, I didn't know that. But now you've got to go through that as a leader in marketing, or even if you're part of the digital team, take the opportunity to go, this is what I'm going to do this year and really dig into this. As my team member in the UK team at the company I worked with GDPR, she took it on herself to assist me, the ignorant dinosaur at the top of the chain, to assist me in going down that path because she knew, she understood, she was ahead of the curve. And then when I got to the point where I get it, God for that, here we go, right, let's go. And it was really quite an interesting process to go through. So take a look at everything you're doing and take a look at it from a different lens.
Yeah.
How are we, who, with whom, and how, and what does that mean? Data, process, and some of this is going to be uncomfortable. Some of this is going to be challenging on a company point of view, the people that you work with in your team, because there will be a level of ignorance that you're going to have to accept that we're all complicit in. Whether you're client, agency, and or publisher, we're all part of the same journey. We're all part of what's been successful, and we're all part of what might not be as successful moving forwards. So there's no point finger pointing.
No.
We've all done well out of this.
Yeah.
We've all been successful to one point or another. Now the landscape's going to change. So let's go through the process. Revisit what you're doing with a different lens. Take a really good look at it, whether you own it directly, whether it's with an agency or a third-party publisher. Ask those questions. What is it that you're relying from a digital supply chain? How are you doing that? Or how is that party doing it on your behalf? With quite a degree of an audit, as it were. And one of the things we're thinking we need to be starting to do.
And what do you need to get a little bit ahead of the curve?
A bit of
because
intelligence,
rather than
a bit of insight, and a bit of analysis of your own position, your own opportunity, and potentially your own risk that you need to mitigate. And there are organisations that can and will help you do that. And in some cases, because this is completely new and we don't know, let's learn together.
Yeah,
it's a vital
I was going to say, I think the vital part now is test and learn.
Yeah.
We need to be checking and double checking that if elements like the Facebook audience network are going to be defunct, I don't know if they are, but if they are, then we need to look at alternatives. If they find an alternative, is it going to be the right kind of alternative for us?
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Whether it is,
all of these questions need to be asked, and now is a great time to test and learn. What would happen if we didn't have access to this? What would that do to our numbers? How would we bolster them?
If
What
I
would
was
we
in the
do?
sort of CMO role at the moment, irrespective of the size of the company and the budget, I would actually first do that sort of maybe quick in-house assessment, get a litmus test, get a feel, a barometer, and then given that, I would make a prediction that probably quite a few people can go, okay, we need to look at this. Whether you act on it right away now, but I would say you need a work stream on an ongoing basis, because this will flare up and come back down again. It's not going to be consistent. Things will pop up, solutions. There'll be another investigation. Google or other parties may come up with another solution. And other walled gardens. And so you've got to keep this probably a level of consistent work stream through the next, I'd say, 18 months. I think it's that important. It has the potential to be that important. So I would say, take a look, do an audit, analyze, take a look at yourself and your organization, how you get into market. And then you may go, right, we need to sort this out right now. We're overexposed. I didn't know. Or we're okay at the moment. We've got other things, but don't walk away from that. Keep going and just keep an eye on it. When you come to renew your agencies, when you come to renew contracts, etc., apply this lens to that moving forwards, as well as applying it to what you've already done. I think it's that fundamental. It's that bigger table stakes, which is why I'm doing what I'm doing with this company.
Amazing. Thank you. Our time is up. We will republish this if it didn't broadcast live. Thank you so much, Paul.
Pleasure, as always.
As usual, though, with these new things, it's brought up more questions than anything else.
Tell me about it.
But I think it's, of all the things I think I would walk away from this knowing, which is that I'm now aware of what impact this is going to have, or a fair understanding, and that means we, as you rightly say, we can do something about it. So I think this is not the first time we're going to talk about it. I think we'll talk about it again. But I do believe that we all need to be very aware and asking those questions of our agencies, of the platforms we use, of our colleagues and peers within marketing. So we'll be back again, of course, with another topic, probably early September now. So look out for that. In the meantime, thanks again, Paul.
Pleasure. Thank you.
See you all soon.